Welcome to Miller's Monsters. I'm Mr. Beelzebub. This is Count Luna. Behind me is Edgar P. the Scully. And with the new Exorcist movie coming out this year, I looked back at the 1973 Exorcist, which we all know was inspired by William Peter Blatty's book entitled The Exorcist. But Blatty himself gained inspiration from the real life exorcism of a teenager named, or only known as, Roland Doe in April of 1949. Now, Roland was an only child, and he was very close to his Aunt Hattie. And his Aunt Hattie was a spiritual person, believed in the afterlife, and dabbled in seances, and she taught a young Roland how to use the Ouija board and taught him some seance techniques. Unfortunately, Aunt Hattie passed away, and Roland took to using the Ouija board to try to make a connection or speak to his Aunt Hattie. Hey, it's Mr. Beelzebub, and before we continue with this possessed episode, hit that like, hit that subscribe, ring that bell, set yourself up for notifications so you don't miss another stumbling, bumbling, rumbling episode of me tripping over my tongue. And tell your friends. Around this time, the family started hearing rustling sounds in the walls that they figured were just rodents at the time, but eventually they learned that these sounds had moved from the walls but up into Roland's room, and he would hear footsteps in the room of somebody following him, or somebody marching across the floor. And then it moved into his mattress, where they heard these scratching sounds coming from the mattress, and other strange things started happening. Things started flying across the room. Books fell off the shelves. His desk at school started shaking violently, and ultimately Roland at home was thrown from a heavy rocking chair where it just flipped on its own, and he fell to the floor. With these strange things going on, the family consulted doctors, and they could find nothing wrong with Roland. So, the next step then for the family was to consult with their minister. One night, the family heard screaming from Roland's room, and they ran up there to see what was going on, entered the room, and they saw a heavy dresser slide across, blocking their exit. Then suddenly the drawers opened, things flew out of the drawers. There you go. Got to give Luna a treat every now and then. Again, they went to the minister, and the minister brought Roland to his house, and just to give the family a break and get Roland out of that atmosphere, and maybe things would improve. But they didn't improve at all. Eventually, after they went to bed, the bed started shaking, and Roland woke up. The minister tried putting him in a rocking chair. Again, strange things started happening. Finally, he laid a couple blankets down on the floor, and was terrified when he saw later in the night Roland being dragged across the floor on these blankets right under the bed. And he yelled for Roland to get out, looked underneath the bed, and Roland's body was convulsing and rising and hitting the bed springs underneath the bed. Finally, the minister got him out, and he had cuts on his face from that. And this finally got the priest to thinking, well, maybe this is a possession that no one really wanted to believe at first, except for the family. So the Catholic Church was consulted, and a priest was put in charge, and he said, wasn't familiar with the exorcist rituals or anything like that, and he suggested prayer. So the family went back, and on the first night of praying, they were to light some candles, and when they lit the candles, the flame flew up to the ceiling. And so obviously just the prayers didn't work. With this not working, the priest was then given permission to perform the exorcism, but he had no experience at it. But they put him in charge of it, and he studied up on it and went to perform the exorcism. But not soon after it had started, it ended because Roland had pried a spring loose from the mattress he was on and cut the priest's arm down the length of his arm, and that was it for that priest. He was out of there. He did survive, but they say he never gained full use of his arm again. So the strange occurrences kept happening, and then we have a second exorcism that was going to be performed by two priests, and so they started performing the second exorcism, and there was 4 days of prayer. Again, mattress was shaking. Roland was spitting in the face of the priests, of course, uttering blasphemies that they didn't even want recorded, because these priests had asked for somebody to record it in case somebody was gonna have to learn from this experience, whereas the church itself demanded there be no recordings of this anywhere. So the church wasn't big on admitting to doing exorcisms, but during this 4-day time, there was hand biting, and Roland would just stand up and start singing show tunes. Well, I don't know if they were show tunes. That's a little bit on my side, but he would just stand up and start singing, and just trying to keep the priests there all night. And now they're getting exhausted because no one's supposed to know about this, so they're there all night because they're worried about Roland, and he's up singing tunes, and then they had to go about their normal day as if nothing happened. So finally it was decided that Roland should be baptized, and they decided to do it at the front of the church. And on the way to the church for baptism, Roland tried to take control of the car and wrecked the car, and they got there, and those plans were tortured, so they dragged them up into an office in the church and just threw water on him, which seemed to calm him down. And then they wanted to do First Communion, and it took them forever to get them through First Communion. But it seems at this time, as they're trying to get them to take communion, they learn that there's one word that Roland will never say, and this entity says, you'll never be rid of me, because he's never going to say this word. And finally, Roland, with the use of Latin that the entity couldn't understand, is willing to say the rosary, say prayers, take communion, and say the word Dominus, and that's the word that the entity said that he would never say. And after this was said, Roland snaps out of it and says he felt the best he's ever felt since the 15th, when this demon started to possess him. And the next day, he was in a mental institute at the time when this was occurring, and the whole building shook. And that's when the priest knew that Roland was free of his possessor. Now, was he possessed? Well, it depends on who you talk to. The people have looked at this, I think it was in the 1980s, and said, Roland, he was a bit of a prankster. He loved to, in talking to witnesses, he loved pranks, and he loved to frighten his friends and frighten his mother. And, someone witnessed him shaking his desk so violently in school once that the teacher threw him out of the room. Other people witnessed him carving things in his own skin with his long fingernails, so that would account for all of the strange markings that showed up on his body during this time. And, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I'm not here to judge. Could have been a possession. It could also have been a only child trying to manipulate his family into doing what he wanted to do, which was go to St. Louis, which they ended up doing. and getting out of school, which he hated and stated he hated, and many people said he hated, and get the attention he wanted, because obviously he was the center of attention this whole time things went on. So there you have it. There's the inspiration for the book The Exorcist and the 1973 movie The Exorcist. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I was able to learn you something. And hit that bell, hit the like, hit subscribe, and tell your friends all about it. Tell them to come watch it, and set yourself up for notifications so you don't miss another possessed episode. And I will talk to you later. Maybe.